back to Let's Learn Together. I am George Yusuf. In this video tutorial, we'll talk about macros, how to create them, and how to use them. If you noticed in the previous few video tutorials, we did a lot of repetition of some instructions. For example, we created some functions to print a string and another functions to print a character, and we kept calling those functions to execute those instructions for us. Well, from now on, what we're going to do is create these little mini programs and save them as macros, and then just call that macro to do that job for us. So let's get started. Maybe you want to, for a minute, go to the documentation page, click on tutorials, number 10 at the bottom is macros, click on that. It's a short page explaining what macros are. Take a moment to go through this page, read it, and then come back and continue with this tutorial. So normally if you want to print a string like this or a message, you would obviously put the offset of that message or string in DX register, put number 9 in AH register, and then call interrupt 21. Right, so let's do that for a minute. I'm going to say load effective address into DX of message 1, move into AH 09, and then call interrupt 21 edge. Now, of these three instructions, or this block of instructions, the only thing that is variable that can be changed is message 1. This could be something else. Maybe you have another message called message 2 over here, or another string called something else. This is the only thing that you would change to print that string. The remaining of these instructions, or part of these instructions, are constant. You have to load into DX the offset. That does not change. You have to put 9 into edge. That does not change. And you have to call interrupt 21. So message 1 is the only variable. In other words, so this instruction block of instructions has one variable. So our macro will have one variable. So let's create a macro, and I'll put this macro right before start, right here. I'm going to make some space. Let's name this macro print str for string. That's the name of the macro. And then we'll type the directive macro after that. And then we'll give it one parameter. This could be any name. You can say parameter 1, for example, or whatever name you want. I'll say follow the convention and just type P1. If I had 2 parameters, I'll put comma and type P2. If I have 3 parameters, I put another comma and type P3. These parameters are substituted in the program. And now all I have to do is copy that and put it in the macro. And instead of saying message 1, I'm going to change that to P1. And at the end, all I have to do is type end M for ending macro. Now I can simply just call this macro like that. I'll just say print str msg1. This will print the macro, print this string for me using a macro. So let's give it a try, emulate and run. And this macro did its job for us. So you can put this macro anywhere you want before the start, before the code section. You can put it before the origin, before the jump start, or before the start, right there. But you cannot put it at the bottom. The other option is to save it in a file. So let's open a notepad. Okay, and I'm simply going to cut this from here and paste it in a notepad. And we want to save this as save as will go to my C drive where EMU8086 is installed and go to the Inc folder, INC, and we'll save this as maybe YT for YouTube macros.inc file, right? And we'll save it over here, save as inc. Now, all I have to do in this program, in this source code, is include it in here. I'm going to say include YT macros.inc. And let's give it a try. I'm going to emulate, run. Good, it works as expected. I want you to pay attention to how this macro works. If I click on emulate and do single step instead, see what happens. Look at that. It cleared this right side of the emulator and it expanded that macro. And here you can see it says move 102 into DX, which was move this offset of this message into DX. Then we have move 09 into AH, and then we have interrupt 21, and then end of the program is 20H. If I click on single step, it goes through these instructions right there. So you cannot see them in your source code, but you can see them in the emulator. Okay, just for you to know. Now let's create another macro to print a character, 1-byte character. We will do the same thing as before. We're going to type our instructions to print a character that would be load or move into DL, not DX, DL only, because this is going to be 1 byte, MSG1, that's going to load the letter T only, and DL register, and then move into AH02, and then into 21H. So let's determine again, in this block of instructions, the only variable is again message 1. So that goes into the, I'm gonna cut that, goes into the macro file, which I already have. P1 is the variable, so let me paste this here again just to compare it. As you can see, P1 into DL, same here, message 1 into DL, 02 into AH, same here, and then interrupt 21, and then end the macro. So for now, all we have to do is, again, call this macro, and I'll say print char MSG1. This will print one letter only, letter T. Oh, let me save that. Before I go on, I'll come back to this and do some explanations on this file. Let's run it. And as you can see, letter T is printed in the corner right there. So let me go back to this file and explain what I did. So as you can see, I typed list of macros in this file at the top, numbered them, obviously. Number 1 is the print string, the first one that created will print string variable. Number 2, print char, will print one character in DL register, and then the macro itself is numbered over here, number 1, 2, 3, and so on. Some explanation in the macro. This macro needs one parameter to be passed by user, and the print string is there. And then number 2 is print character macro, and that too we can say this macro needs one parameter to be passed by user. Okay. Then number 3 is print characters, more than one. Now that number 2 works, let me save that. So let's go to another macro we want to create that prints more than one character using service 2. since I have it already here, what I'm going to do is just copy these instructions and we'll go over them. Okay, so what we have, let me delete that first. We're gonna load the, this would be message, right, MSG1, and then P2 would be the count. So I'm gonna have to say, let's create a length for this variable. I'm gonna say length equal $ minus MSG1 minus 1, as we've done before. This is not new. And over here, I'll say move length into CL. So how does this work? We're going to load the offset of our message in SI register this time, right here, right? And then we'll zero the CX register and then put length into CL. Okay, then we're going to have a loop called L1 loop. And what we can do is move what SI is pointing to, which at the moment would be, I believe that would be 102, right? Let's emulate and find out. Message 1, it starts at 102, correct? So SI is pointing to 102, so I want to, since I put it in square brackets, I want the value that this register is pointing to in memory to be moved in DL register, which in this case would be the letter T, the first one in our message. And then obviously 02 into AH, interrupt 21 to print that letter. And what we can do is increment SI, which will move to point to the second byte in this message would be H. Once it's incremented, we're going to loop back to L1, which will move whatever SI is pointing to. The second time around would be pointing to H. We'll move it into DL register again and repeat everything else. And then come back again, increment, and go to I, and then S, and then space, and then I, and S, and so on. That's what we're doing here. So let's just run this program without the macro first. Emulate and run it. As you can see, it printed one character at a time, the whole message. So in order to turn this into a macro, you have to decide what are the variables in your macro. So the name of the variable obviously is the first one, message 1, that we've talked about before. And the second one is you have to, in order to print more than one character, you have to give the count how many characters you want to print. This is why we created this directive here that says length is $ minus the start of the message and -1 to not to count the $ itself as part of the message. And we put that in CX register or CL register. Then we move whatever SI is pointing to into DL. Obviously, everything else in here is not a variable. It has to be there for this block of instruction to do its job. So only two variables. Since that's the case, in the macro itself, I have two variables, P1 and P2. P1 is the message, P2 is the length, and going into CLers into the counter register. Let me think if we could change something else here. Yes, so I think we don't need this instruction over here, move to into AH, to be repeated every time. So I'll put this outside the loop just to make this program more efficient. Why repeat this instruction every single time, since it does not change? And I can show you if I do single step. If you notice, O2 and AH does not change. Nothing affects it. Interrupt 21 will print the first one, increment SI, loop, and then load again into TL, interrupt C, O2 is still there, interrupt 21, it keeps printing. If I keep going, it keeps printing without changing AH register. So since nothing is affecting AH register, we can take that instruction and move it outside the loop so it does not repeat itself every time. Make the program more efficient. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'll just take that from here and let's put it outside the loop. And I'm going to save this file. And now we can just simply call this macro using its name. We'll simply say print char s with an S. Remember, the first one was print char, and the second one is print chars with an S for more than one character. So since this has two parameters, we have to pass two parameters to it, which is first one is message, msg1, comma, the second one is length. Now, you could, instead of length, I could also say just the number itself. Let me load. Let's do this. I'm going to move into CX, for example, length, find out, it's 38. Find out how many characters is our message. Move into CX, it's 26, that's 16, so yeah, 38. Okay, so I can simply say 38 over here. Oh, it's going to work out the same way. This I don't need. Let me run it just to show you. As you can see, it's printing the message, and it did. Or I could say length. That's going to work out the same way. Print and run. Here you go. Okay, so that worked out as expected. So we're going to do some more macros in the next video. However, this one has gone over 15 minutes, so we're going to have to end it here. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share, comment, do whatever you can to help this channel. I hope to see you again in the next one. Goodbye now.